it's Tim. Today's recipe is skillet pizza. This is the 11th recipe in the book Bread Illustrated by America's Test Kitchen. Here's a picture from the book of what the skillet pizza is supposed to look like when it's done. We'll see how we do. This is a great recipe like all the recipes in this book, and part of the reason it's great is because they list all of the steps that you need and a little troubleshooting help on one page, and then on the other they've got pictures of every step of the way so that you can get a sense of what the heck you're supposed to do. This is the first time I've made this recipe. I used bread flour, instant dry yeast, salt, olive oil, and some water. I'm going to add some ice to the water to make it super cold, because that's what they tell me to do in the book. So we're going to put all this in a food processor. There goes the flour, the salt, the yeast. And now I'm going to put the top on, and I'm going to stream the water in. I'm holding back the ice with one hand and streaming the water in. And then I'm going to add the olive oil. All the ingredient amounts you'll find in the description. This only goes for about 20 seconds or so, and then I let it rest for a few minutes. That's that. And I'll come back and I'll run the food processor again. And that'll be the end of how the dough is mixed. You're going to need some olive oil, and I used a cast iron skillet. You can use anything that's oven safe up to 500 degrees, and you'll need a bowl to put the dough in to let it rise. It's going to take about an hour and a half to 2 hours for it to double in size. So here we go with the second round in the food processor after the dough's had a chance to rest. The total time that I spent actually working on this dough before rolling it out into the shape of a pizza was about 2 minutes. The food processor did all the work. And as you can see, it just goes around and around and around. Now I'm going to take it out, put it on the counter with a little bit of flour on the counter, a little bit of flour on my hands. Use my trusty bowl scraper to get the dough out. And take about 20 or 30 seconds to form this into a ball. A little tiny bit of kneading, not much. And that's that. We're going to put it in a bowl. We're going to let it rest and rise for an hour and a half to 2 hours. And then we'll come back later on and form it into the shape of a pizza. In the meantime, we're going to make the sauce. So this is like baking and cooking all at the same time. The ingredients for the sauce, as you can see laid out, include the oregano, salt and pepper, olive oil, red wine vinegar, 1 28-ounce can of whole tomatoes that I've drained, reserving the liquid for later, and I'm going to chop 2 cloves of garlic. As it turned out, these 2 cloves of garlic were fairly, I guess maybe they're too big or too robust, but I would cut the garlic back in this recipe if I did it again. Now this is easy again. We're just using the food processor. Some people might say, why did you chop the garlic if you're just putting it in a food processor? Well, because it takes so little time for this sauce to come together that the garlic wouldn't be chopped up. It would still be pretty much whole, and that wouldn't be good at all. So we'll get all of the vinegar into the food processor bowl. Oh yeah, put the food processor bowl on the right way. That'll help. And we'll just pulse that until it's stopped and mixed. Stir the bowl down, run it for another couple of seconds, and that's that. It goes into a 2-cup measuring cup. And now we're going to see why we reserve that liquid, is we're going to add enough liquid so that we actually have 2 cups of tomato sauce. You don't need all this to make the recipe. The recipe makes 2 pizzas. You use a ½ a cup per recipe, so there'll be some left over. Fresh basil, mozzarella cheese, whole milk, and a ½ a cup of the sauce. A little flour to dust. And now we're going to roll this dough out. make us a pizza. So start to finish, including time for this dough to rise, I think it took me about maybe 2.5 hours to make a pizza from scratch. So if you got home at 5 o'clock and you wanted to have pizza to watch your favorite show that comes on at 8 or 9 o'clock, you can make it, do it. You don't have to do takeout. You don't have to do frozen pizza. So there I go. You see how long it's taken me to get this done. No time at all. Don't handle it too much, so we don't want to build up any resistance in the dough, because we're going to try to make this into an 11-inch round. So just play with it enough to get it into a ball. Start pressing it out. The way I like pizza, the crust on the outside edge is a little bit thicker than the crust in the body of the pizza, so I try to make that outside more, have a more pronounced structure than the rest of it. And the way I do that is this. Hold on to it, let the weight of the dough stretch it out, and you can see that there's sort of a ring forming around the outside, and that'll work. And now as I continue to press the dough out with my hands, that outer ring is going to remain intact while the dough gets flattened and stretched and pulled and made into an 11-inch round. There it is. So this pan on the stove has been heating up. It's got about 2 tablespoons of oil in it. You can see how it shimmers across. It's really hot. The oven's at 500 degrees, really hot. We're going to pull this dough. I got to get it loosened off of my work surface so that when I pick it up, I don't rip it in half. That would be bad. And here we go. This pan is ripping hot, so got to be a little bit careful, but don't be afraid of it. You got to take dominion over the dough. Reform it as necessary when it goes in the pan. And it's going to cook this way for 2 or 3 minutes. And you can see that oil is more or less frying the dough. So half a cup of sauce goes on the crust. Try to leave a 1/2 inch or so around the edge. The mozzarella cheese I sliced into roughly 1/4 inch slices. The recipe called for fresh mozzarella. That's not what I bought because I didn't have the recipe with me. I should have bought it. See how nice and golden that crust is on the bottom? Going in the oven. The fresh mozzarella would have melted better and been creamier when the pizza was done, but this was still delicious. So there it is. That's about 7 minutes in a 500-degree oven. And I'm going to show you the bottom of it. Look at that. Crispy, fantastic. I'm not sure I need a wood-fired outdoor pizza oven. If I can do this in a cast iron skillet and a hot stove. Fresh basil chop goes on top. We'll get this off of that cooling rack. Let it rest for a couple of minutes, just long enough to where when you cut it, cheese doesn't stick to the pizza cutter and doesn't melt everywhere. A couple of minutes. And I figured it was going to make 6 nice slices, so there's one. And there you have it. Skillet pizza from the book Bread Illustrated by America's Test Kitchen. If I can do this, you can do this. Buy the book. Let's start baking. Thanks.